Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. My name is Trent and today we are going to walk you through from start to finish an IFR flight from Abbotsford, British Columbia down to the Seattle airport in live weather conditions, which are probably not going to be very good, and if they're not bad enough, we'll make them worse by setting the weather to settings to whatever we want. So we're going to start off with a cold and dark start. We're going to be flying the Beechcraft Baron G58 Twin, and we're going to follow a flight plan that we're about to create here in the Microsoft Flight Planning tool. So when you're using this tool, the first thing you want to do is type in where you want to go from, and CYZZ, I believe it's ZZ. Oh my goodness. Here we go, CYZZ. No, I've gone and forgotten the darn thing. So let's just try Abbotsford. There we go, CYXX. So we're going to go from CYXX to KSEA. Okay, so there's a number of things that you can do in Flight Planner, but the easiest, I mean, you can pick your departure manually, or you can auto-select a departure, you can auto-select the route, you can auto-select your arrival and what have you, or you can just go up to suggested routes. So here you've got the suggested route. We're going to click select. Now the reason that I chose the suggested route is because when you're doing this in the real world, especially if you're using ForeFlight, you're also going to do the same thing. You're going to look at what routes have been previously approved by ATC, and you're going to, generally speaking, pick one of those routes. Because that is going to give you the highest probability of having ATC approve your flight plan. Now we're going to need to select a departure, so we're just going to choose auto select. So there's our departure, and then we're going to need to do, we're not going to choose an arrival because we're not flying a jet. We're not going to be that high today, and we're just going to choose an approach. And so there is our approach. And then once we're happy with that, which for all intents and purposes at this point I am, we're going to go ahead and we're going to save that flight plan, CYXX-KSEA, and we'll call it demo. And we're going to save that as a new plan. Now you're going to hop over into Microsoft Flight Simulator, click on the EFB, click here on the routes, load flight plan, and there's the one that we want. So we're going to load it. Now, a couple of things, if you haven't seen my other video, I do have a whole nother video that shows you how to use this EFB in detail, and I'll make sure I put a link to that down in the description. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to file the flight plan with ATC, and you can see when we did that, now there is our flight plan. And that's also going to help the AI air traffic control to give us all the right radio calls. And this is a fantastic tool also for helping you to practice those calls. And then once we get into the plane, we're going to send it to the avionics. So we're not going to start off on the runway. We're going to start off on parking. And we're going to go ahead and start our flight. All right, here's our beautiful airplane, and it doesn't look like we have the IFR conditions that I want us to have. So we're going to make the weather a little bit worse. Let's do custom, get rid of live weather, and we're going to go overcast. Okay, and then let's see. I'm going to bring this cloud layer down to about 823 feet. And then when we're up flying today, so that we're not flying in the clouds the entire time and then we can enjoy the view, once we're up at cruise altitude, we'll probably switch the weather back to something a little bit nicer, and then we'll make it worse again for our landing. Okay, so we can walk around the plane if you want to do the walk around, but I'm going to kind of fast track that and only do the bare minimum things that we need to do here. We got to get rid of these. Got to get rid of the wheel chocks, and there's probably a pitot tube cover hanging around here someplace. Or maybe there's not. That's weird. Where's the pitot tube? Well, looks like we're happy, so we're going to go ahead and hop in the airplane. So if you've never done a cold and dark before, the great thing about the EFB is that we have, if you go over here to airplane, we have checklists now built in for every aircraft. So we're going to assume that we've got our documentation on board, our parking brake is set, all the electrical equipment is off, ailerons and rudders are working just fine. You can see them moving around there. And elevator trim is set to neutral. So let's go have a look at our trim. Where's our trim wheel hiding? It's right down in there. Whoops. Let's zoom in on that a little bit. It's hard to actually tell if that's neutral or not, but I'm willing to bet you that it is neutral. So walk-arounds complete. Fuel cap, etc. Pitot tube. Apparently there is a pitot tube out there, so let's go back out and have a look for the pitot tube. Why is my mouse not cooperating? There we go, pitot tube. You gonna show it to us? No. Well, let's just have another quick look for the pitot tube. As a matter of fact, to not bore you guys, I'm going to pause the video and see if I can't find a hidden pitot tube on here. Well, there's what looks to be our pitot tube, but it does not have a cover on it, so back into the airplane we go. And we're going to skip right on through pitot tube, tires, everything's great. So before starting engine. So pilot seat backs, that's good. Seat and seat belts, those are good. Parking brake. So how do we make sure the parking brake is set? Well, I have it mapped to a button that's not set. That's set, so the parking brake is set. Avionics master is off. Landing gear is obviously down because we're sitting on the wheels. Cowl flap is full open. So let's go down to about number, what have we got here? Number 6. So cowl flap is closed. So we want those open. Okay, there we go. Fuel selector. Check on. So let's go back here and see if that little look thing will work for us. There we go. Fuel selector on and on. So that's good. Circuit breakers are all pushed in. Excellent. Battery and alternator on. So let's go and move our little EFB out of the way here. Here. There we go. Left battery, right battery. There we go. Check fuel quantity. I don't see a fuel gauge anywhere. So that's odd. I know there'll be one here in the G1000 once we fire it up. Check that the quantity of fuel on the board is sufficient for the planned flight. Okay, landing gear. There we got our 3 green. Throttle levers are at idle, which they are. Prop RPM max, which they are. Condition levers full rich, which they are now. Alternator switches on. Oh, maybe I turned those on a little bit early. Okay, now we're going to go over to starting engine. So right throttle, we want full open. RPM levers max. Right condition lever full rich. Right boost pump. So there we've got the right boost pump. Now we want throttle back to just about 1/2 of an inch. And we want right engine start. And there it is there. Okay. So right throttle now we want to adjust. We're going to bring that back just a little bit. Okay. Oil pressure. Let's check the oil pressure. And again, no oil pressure here because this is not on yet. Now I wonder if maybe I forgot something a little earlier on here. So normally we want our avionics master on, but usually you turn it on after you've started the engine. But I think in this case, we're probably going to want to turn that avionics master on. Maybe I was reading the checklist a little too quickly. So let's get rid of that. Avionics master. There we go. And now we can see our engine details. Here, okie doke. So oil pressure is looking good. Oil temperature is looking good. So let's do a left engine start. So repeat the process. All right. So let's just go back up here. So left throttle, full open. Left prop, full forward. Condition lever, full forward. So let's turn that off, turn that on. Now we're going to do throttle open 1/4 of an inch. And there we go. Let's start up that other engine. And then we're going to go right back to checking oil temp and oil pressure. Going to equalize those throttles. What is that, number 4? There you go. You can see I've got them equalized. And so left engine start after starting engine. See, now it wants us to turn the avionics master on, which is what I was saying earlier is normally the way you do it. And then lights as required. So we're going to go strobe, beacon, nav. And normally you actually turn the beacon on before you start the engine. And that way it lets taxi, landing panel. Let's see, we'll turn our panel on and our cabin lights on. And then parking brake release. Okay, so let's get ourselves in the driver's seat. And now we are going to call up ATC. And we're going to tune ground. Now, normally you would also get an ATIS before you leave. We're going to go ahead and tune ground. Oh, actually, hold on. We've got to load our flight plan. Haha. So let's go back to the MFD. Let's bring up this. And we are going to go here, and send route to avionics. So you can see right now, oh, oddly enough, there is a flight plan in there already. Look at that. But we're going to send it to avionics anyway, just to be sure there's no mistakes. So then we can zoom out. Do we have a full flight plan here? Let's have a look. Oops. Come on, click, click. There we go. Oddly enough, it doesn't appear to be giving us a route. So we've got our departure. Let me just pause the video for a second. We'll check this out. Okay, I figured that I reloaded the route again and that sorted us out. So now we can scroll through. We've got our departure, we've got our en route, we've got our airway, and then we've got our approach, our ILS approach onto runway 34 right into Seattle. So we are all set to go. All right, here we are at the hold short for 07. So let's go ahead and get some clearance to depart. So one of the things that I always do in the real aircraft before I take off is I set my autopilot up so that all I have to do is push the autopilot button when I want the autopilot to come on, and I've got my heading bug correct. I've got it in heading mode. So what you can see that I'm doing here. So first of all, I've set the first altitude to 3,000 feet. So let's zoom in on here and show you guys how to do this. We'll get rid of this. So I wanted, and we'll just move it over just a little bit like so. Okay, so you're gonna put it in altitude mode, and you're going to set whatever altitude you want. Then you're going to set what speed you want to get to that altitude. So the reason we choose flight level change when we're climbing as opposed to vertical speed is an autopilot. If you set it for vertical speed of say 3,000 feet a minute and your aircraft isn't capable of that, the autopilot will actually stall the aircraft. By saying, hey, I want to climb out at 90 knots, the autopilot's going to choose whatever pitch is necessary to achieve 90 knots. We're in heading mode, and then it's going to be runway 07. So you can either look up the exact magnetic heading, or you can put it at 07, or once you're lined up on the runway, you can just click on this button here. So now we're in heading mode. We're set to climb at 90 knots to an initial altitude of 4,000 feet. So once you've done that, you are ready to go. There we are, runway 07. And you can see 07 is pretty darn, if you, by looking at that heading bug, you can see it's pretty close to the heading that we're on, or almost exactly that. So full power and manage our rudders. Look for our rotation speed. Well, these rudders are sensitive. And there's our rotation speed. Wow. And let's put our gear up. And we'll go ahead and turn that autopilot on. Alright guys, we're back, and this time the autopilot is working. This would have been a really sucky flight to do without an autopilot. So let's acknowledge this is normally what would happen. Tower is going to pass you to departure. Again, so this must be a bit of a bug, because what I was hoping for is to have this be classified as an IFR flight. And usually at some point you can request that it be IFR, but it doesn't seem to be the case on this particular one. So right now we are in, our autopilot is in nav mode. Here you can see it's on. We've reached our cruise altitude of 8,000 feet. You can see that we're heading towards Govis, and after Govis is Igtag, then Gabvo, and then we're going to join our airway. Now, if you were in the real world, let's zoom out here, and ATC decided that they wanted to clear you to, say, a different point. Let's say that they cleared us, this might muck with our flight, to YEA, or YAI rather. You could hit direct, there it is, enter, enter, and now The autopilot is going to take us.
X-ray Golf Papa contact Seattle Center on 128.5. Good day.
Going to take us right to whatever route, and ATC will do that on IFR flights.
128.5 Beechcraft X-ray Golf Papa.
If they can give you a shortcut, they will definitely do so.
Seattle Center Beechcraft Charlie. Foxtrot X-ray Golf Papa 8,000 feet. Beechcraft Charlie. Foxtrot X-ray Golf Papa Seattle Center altimeter 29.92 continue as planned. Beechcraft X-ray Golf Papa contact with the approach on 120.7. Good day. Going to 120.7 Beechcraft X-ray Golf Papa.
Now this might be another bug because I don't have any options to do anything. I was going to see if I could cancel flight following. And request IFR, but that does not seem to be the case. So that's kind of lame. So now let's assume that we've been cleared direct to... Wrong button. There we go. Highlight that. And we've been cleared to egret. So let's do that. Matter of fact, to shorten things up here a little bit more even, let's say that we've been cleared directly to PAE. Now, if you want to pull your EFB back up again, so you can see there is our original flight plan, but we were cleared direct PAE, which is this waypoint here. And again, ATC would do this if they felt it was not going to cause any problems with traffic separation. So now to get there a little faster, we're going to speed it up 3 times. And I'll come back and join you when we're at PAE. Okay, so we had a little autopilot failure again, and I had to reset the flight, but we are now just 2.4 miles north of the PAE waypoint, which you can see here. And as much as I have the flight plan and the approach loaded, you can see there's nothing else here. So we're going to just reload. And actually, we'll try activating it first of all. Now, we're going to select approach. We're just going to do it again. And we're going to say ILS 34 right. And then we've got to figure out which of these points that we want to choose. So to do that, let's just scroll through them and see which one makes the most sense. Looks like they're all going to be fine. We'll do WAG-T. Enter. And we're going to load that approach. Now at this point in time, we're going to say that ATC has cleared us direct to WAG-T. So if that were to happen, you would hit direct to, enter, activate, and you can see now that that approach has been activated. And so if we get rid of this, you can see the whole path that we're going to be flying into SeaTac. I generally like to keep the flight path here, so we need it also to descend down to 6,000 feet. So let's go back over here and we're going to choose 6,000 vertical speed. Generally IFR, you're going to go down at about 500 feet per minute. And we should also have done this a long time ago, reduce the condition levers and pulling back our power for that descent. We can also pull up our descent checklist. In-flight descent. So altimeter, we're just going to leave it at 2992. Throttle as required. Anti-ice, we'll turn both of those on. And power rating as required. So before landing, seats and seat belts. Fuel selectors are on both. Auxiliary fuel pumps are both off. Cowl flaps set as required. Well, because I reset the flight, they're closed already, so that's fine. We'll leave them closed. Mixture would be full rich, but we're not quite there yet. So we've got 42 miles to go until the initial approach fix. So I'll go ahead and pause the video here and scoot us up to that initial approach fix, and then we'll come back. All right, guys, welcome back. I figured out what was killing the autopilot. I had the same key binding mapped to the pause and record on OBS as to killing the autopilot in the aircraft. So as you can see now, we are approximately right here, 2.3 miles away from Wagti. We're at 6,000 feet. You can see over here, 6,000 feet, 5,000, 4,000. The final approach fix of Buck is at 2,200. So in the real world, at this point in time, if you had not already done so, which you probably would have, you would be briefing your approach. So in this case, we've got Seattle here. We can pull up the plate, and it is the 3-4. We want to make sure FAA plates, 3-4 right. So the aircraft position is not accurate. This is yet another bug. But nonetheless, here is our approach. So you can see we are headed to Wagti, which is this waypoint right here. Wagti requires 6,000 feet. Next is Neil or Nifal, whatever it's called, which we're headed to now. So now we want to descend. Now that we're past Wagti, we want to descend to, so let's do this way so you guys can see what I'm doing here. We want to descend to 5,000 feet, vertical speed down approximately 500 feet per minute, which is a pretty standard descent rate for an IFR flight. We're going to go all the way down to the final approach fixed, then down to our minimums. And minimums here on the ILS for a Category A is 572 feet, which is about 200 feet above the ground. And our clouds are set today higher than that, so we will break out of the clouds before we reach minimums. And apologies for some of the bugs that we've experienced today. It's definitely been annoying as a content creator, and perhaps annoying for you guys to watch as well. But nonetheless, I hope that this is showing value to you from a perspective of an IFR training flight. So we've reached 5,000 feet. We're now at Neil. We now need to go down to 4,000 feet. So there's 4,000 vertical speed down. Now there's another feature when you have, whoops, wrong one. When you have a G1000, we'll just get rid of this here, and that is this VNAV feature. VNAV is an extra cool feature. Generally speaking, if ATC isn't going to assign you step downs, then what's going to happen is you can just hit VNAV and the computer will calculate a top of descent, and you're going to spin your bugged altitude. There we go. So you would spin your bugged altitude down to the altitude of your final approach fix. So we can try that here and see if that's going to work for us. It might mess us up. So let's first of all say that we want to go down to 2200 and hit VNav. Yeah, I don't think it's going to work because we're doing it late. So we'll turn it off. We'll show that to you in another flight. So we're a mile away. We got to descend. We got to go a little slower. And we should probably descend a little quicker because we've only got 0.8 of a mile and we want to get down. Now, we don't have to be down to 4,000. 4,000 is the minimum that we can go down to. And so there's really no problem in being above a height, a mandatory height, sorry, unless it had a line on top of it, the 4,000. That would mean you have to be right at 4,000 feet when you were at cruise. In this case, 4,000 is the minimum. Now, with respect to, now we need to get down to 2,200. And ATC, if it was working properly, would have cleared us for this approach probably some time ago. So we would put it into approach mode, which doesn't seem to be working. Lovely. I'm just having a horrible time with the autopilot here. So the approach, when you put your autopilot in approach mode, it's going to show up the letters GS right here, which means glide slope. And that's going to give you the vertical guidance that you need to get down. Now, I know actually why this is not working, because this is an ILS approach, not an RNAV approach. So it's 110.3. There we go. So now if we arm approach mode, it turns into the green needles, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. So we're established on the localizer. We got our glide slope armed. You can see here, this is the glide slope. We're currently above the glide slope because the diamond is below us. So we have 4.6 miles, roughly a minute and 40 seconds to lose. We're not going to go, we need to decrease our descent rate and slow our aircraft down, because otherwise we are not going to get down. We need to make sure that this diamond is moving closer to the midpoint, because if it's not, and the other thing that we want to get done outside of the final approach fix by about a mile, well, we want to put our gear down. So let's get the cool external view for that, because I love watching the gear come down. Down and locked. And you can check that by looking at those three little buttons right there. And when you're in the real aircraft, I actually keep my hand on the landing gear button until those three lights are on. Okay, so now let's look at our airspeed. Probably want to add a little bit of power. We want to richen our condition levers up a bit because we're descending. We want to speed up our props just a little bit. So we're on the localizer, we're on the autopilot, we're very close to cap. We still have 3 miles to go. So at our current descent, I don't want to speed up too much. At our current descent rate, my guess is we might have a little bit of difficulty. So we're doing 1,000 feet per minute. We've only got a minute and a half left, which would be about 1,500 feet. So rather than, there we go. Now we've captured the glide slope. So we don't have to worry about messing with descent rate any longer. So at this point in time, with the autopilot on, in approach mode, on the localizer, with the glide slope captured, there's really nothing that we need to do other than manage our airspeed and apply flaps. So generally flaps in an IFR flight, you would apply them, at least the way I train students and the way I was trained, is just outside the final approach fix, which in this case here is Buck at 2,200 feet, 2 miles away from us. That's when we would want to go ahead and drop our flaps, because what the FAR requires is a stabilized approach, which means that when you reach the final approach fix, you must have the aircraft fully configured to land. That means established on the localizer with the correct descent rate, with the correct airspeed, so that you don't need to make any changes as you're doing that final approach, from the final approach fix all the way down to the runway threshold or to the missed approach point. So here we're in 1.5 miles, so we'll go ahead and put 1 notch of flaps down right now. You can see those flaps going down just a little bit. And we're going to do this approach. We'll say that our target speed in this plane is 100 knots. So we're just because we don't have an auto throttle here, we're just going to be managing our power to keep us at 100 knots. That's the other thing to understand. When you are a VFR pilot, generally pitch controls airspeed and power controls descent rate. But when you're doing a coupled approach like this on an autopilot, because the autopilot is controlling pitch, let's get a nice little outside view. Because the autopilot is controlling pitch, your throttle is what is controlling your airspeed. Okay, so let's go back to our checklist. Oh, there goes a jet over there. That was cool. So checklists in flight before landing. Seats and seat belts, fuel selector we checked earlier, auxiliary pumps are off, cowl flaps are closed, mixture is now full rich, flaps is 10 to 20 degrees, landing gear is down, flaps are down, and propellers are going to be max RPM. So we'll go ahead and do that. So that is our entire pre-landing checklist. Get some more cool external views as we fly over Seattle. I must say, the graphics are quite impressive in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's one of the reasons. I wish they could get it this good in VR. That's pretty darn awesome clouds. I mean, that looks awfully realistic. So let's hop back in the cockpit. All right, so now if we zoom in on our PFD, we are 5.6 miles away from the runway threshold. Our speed is 5 knots too quick, so I'm going to just cut back the power just a tiny little bit. We're still obviously on the glide slope because the autopilot is keeping us there. We're going to bug our center our heading bug rather. And there's really not much else to do at this point in time other than just monitor your avionics and monitor your autopilot to make sure that it is doing everything that you expect it to be doing. And I can see right now there is the runway ahead of us. Let's have another look at that. Oh, you can't really see it from this view yet, but it's right down there. Here, maybe I can drop this down a little bit. That is where we are going to land. So I could flick the autopilot. So again, in the real world at this point in time, if you were flying into a non-towered airport, you do need to cancel your IFR flight plan before, either in the air by talking to approach and just say, hey, cancel my IFR flight plan because you're now VFR. We can see the runway. Or you would have to call a number and cancel it after you were on the ground. In the case of a towered airport, the tower will cancel it for you automatically. So I'm going to be the lazy pilot and make use of this beautiful amount of automation that we've got in this aircraft. And I'm just going to let the autopilot fly us right on down to the threshold. And then when we get to the point where we need to land, we'll turn it off and we'll flare and we will land the airplane. I'm going to bring us back when we're a little bit closer. Okay, so something else that I've done is I've just worsened the weather because I want to give you guys another quick little lesson on the whole missed approach, which we're not going to do, but we're going to go down to minimums. So in this case, if we look over, I should have time to be able to do this. our minimums are 572 feet. So when we get to 572 feet, there's 500 it says. I don't know why it's saying 500, because we've got 840 here. So what I'm attempting to show you is if the clouds were to magically disappear when you get to minimums, kind of what that looks like, so that you could have perspective on why these minimums exist and why they're so very, very important to follow. Hopefully this isn't going to go badly. Well, in this case here, you can now see the runway environment. There's our PAPI lights. So minimums are 572, which we are now at minimums. So we'll go ahead and flick that autopilot off and land the airplane. So you can see if you're in a situation where you're landing at minimums, that is not necessarily, you know, it's something, don't take it lightly. I think I might have just sped it up at 1 time speed, or more than 1 time speed there. So we can go power idle now. Get lined back up with the center line. Hold it off and hold it off and hold it off. There we go. So I'm not going to bother taxiing it in and parking it and doing all that stuff, because that's not too terribly exciting. So what I was attempting to show you there is minimums, flying down to minimums on a precision approach like an ILS approach, or a precision-like approach like an RNAV approach. It's no joke. You're getting really, really low to the ground. And unless you are a very, very regular IFR pilot, you're probably not going to want to do too many flights where the conditions are right down at minimums. So that's it, everybody. Thank you so much. If you have questions about this somewhat buggy, hellish of a flight, please leave those down in the comments. And if you'd like to have other people be able to get to see this video, go ahead and smash that like button. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll be doing many more of these videos in the future, and hopefully they'll have less bugs than this one. So if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on those, just click that subscribe button down at the bottom. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye-bye.